You're listening to Make It Big, a podcast about all things e-commerce, created by BigCommerce.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Make It Big podcast. I'm Beatrice Este, Content Marketing Manager here at BigCommerce, and I am so excited to be here with Justin Wang, founder and CEO of Larq today. Justin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Beatrice. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we dive in to talk about all things sustainability, commerce, Larq, would love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Great. My name is Justin Wang. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Larq. We started Larq in 2018 to be a sustainable hydration technology company. And our goal is to make sustainable and healthier hydration easier for people to access around the world. And our mission is to reduce our reliance on single-use plastic, as well as increase our health and wellness through better hydration as well.
Well, I know I'm personally a huge fan of Larq. Everyone here at BigCommerce are big fans of Larq. So there was nobody better that we could have on the podcast today to talk about sustainability and commerce. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So, sustainability has been on the rise for the last few years and is truly no longer a commerce and retail trend, but really a vital aspect to any growing business. I mean, we've seen so much explosive growth, especially in this space. And I personally feel like companies should really be focusing on the drivers around sustainability demand, which is really employees and consumers. In a study last year from IBM, it was found that millennials are really leading the charge in sustainability awareness, which, again, going back to that true drivers around sustainability demand with employees and consumers, that definitely aligns. And Gen Z is following really closely behind. But I think the most interesting thing is that across every age group in the study, it was found that topics like sustainability, environmental, and personal wellness remain to be significant considerations when selecting brands to shop with. So to kick us off, in your own words, how would you define sustainability in 2021?
That's a great question, Beatrice. I think sustainability is such a broad topic, but I think one trend that is a common theme here is it's becoming a more and more vital part of our lives, right? Whether you think about the negative consequences of climate change and our impact that we have as a society, as a human society on this earth, not only statistically speaking, we could talk about rising temperatures or increasing volatility in the climate, but also from a personal experience perspective, if you think about the wildfires in California, the power outages and the weather patterns that we had in this past winter in Texas, or the crazy floods that's happening right now in Europe and in Asia. So increasingly, I think it's just becoming more and more of a everyday impact that we see on our society today. So I think, if you rewind maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was a top of mind topic, but maybe something that was more distant and something that is more in the future. But as we move into the 2020s, I think increasingly people are feeling that is impacting them personally as well. And we see that in the data, as you mentioned as well. I think from a business perspective, right, as these things become more important for society, it becomes more important for the consumer, and especially millennials and Gen Z, like you mentioned before. So I think for a business, sustainability in 2021 really has to be part of your DNA. You either live it, you either really live and breathe it, from product to supply chain to your communications and your company mission, or you don't. And I think consumers are increasingly intelligent and increasingly better informed. As a company, you really have to live that or you don't. And I think we not only have a responsibility as companies and to kind of lean into this change, but we also have companies will also greatly benefit from making this change as well with the consumer.
I think you said it really well, right? That sustainability does have to be in the DNA of a company, and not just to please consumers and their interests, but I think also, like you said, there is a responsibility now, right, going into the 2020s. Sustainability has always been at the forefront of Larq's business since the day that you co-founded the company. Why was it so important to you to build a sustainable company and a sustainable product?
Yeah, it really comes from, my personal experiences. I think sustainability, wellness, and enjoying the outdoors has always been something that's quite important to me, having grown up in California. Being able to enjoy the great outdoors and what nature and Earth has to offer us has always been, really core to my own personal identity. So as I started Larq, I thought wellness, sustainability were really strong themes for us. And as we looked around how we consumed, especially in hydration, what we saw was this epidemic of a habit of shipping liquids in plastic containers around the world, right? Whether you're talking about from Fiji or the French Alps or just from 200 miles away from a river, we have this habit of not only shipping water, but increasingly all sorts of liquids around the world when it could be much more decentralized. And we could come up with a technology that not only treats the water, but also makes it easier for people to break that habit. So, really at the end of the day, for us, that's why Larq was founded, was to bridge this gap of what we have with sustainable products today, which is primarily what we like to call container businesses. Water bottles today are just containers for things, but people choose single-use plastic for a lot of other reasons, including ease of access, including convenience, including water quality, and taste and flavor. So a lot of those things are not addressed by the existing products today. So we kind of set out as a mission to, one, decrease the friction point of the consumers today by coming up with a product that is, our first product is a self-cleaning water bottle that purifies water on the go. So really hitting those pain points of convenience as well as water quality, giving the power back to the consumer in order to say, okay, I could fill it from a tap, I could fill it from a river when I'm traveling or when I am at home, to really provide that more sustainable experience and better for you experience as well.
I know I definitely used my Larq water bottle when we had the Texas snowpocalypse, as we're calling it now, back in February of 2021. And that was great to have on hand too. We had a boil order here, so I was using my Larq water bottle to keep us all healthy inside of the house during that time. So big fan over here. Exactly what you talked about in terms of how you set out to create your brand definitely shows in the success and the results of your sustainable business. So there's a lot of conversation about what does it mean to be a sustainable business. You guys were recently honored in Mary Claire's 2021 Sustainability Awards as the best sustainable accessory brand. So congratulations there. A few key accomplishments that I wanted to highlight here for our listeners. So as a company, Larq has reduced 1 million single-use plastic bottles, 3.3 million pounds of plastic waste, and 7.8 million pounds of brand carbon footprint with the use of carbon neutral shipping, which I definitely want to dive into in a little bit. So of course, it's no secret you guys have been successful in creating that sustainable business. What steps have you taken to really reach these goals? And what advice would you have for other companies who are looking to become more sustainable?
As a sustainable hydration company, that is, like I mentioned, is built into our DNA. So it starts really from us. We take a very consumer-centric approach to understanding the problems that consumers have. And as I mentioned, we really focus on three things, which is accessibility and convenience. We have to make sustainability easier for the consumer to access, right? It's not enough to lecture or to educate. We have to make sustainable products just better products, lower friction point. So convenience factor is a huge point. Two is it has to be safe. It has to have the efficacy of producing, the best in class water. So you have to use technology that is compatible with that. And then finally, it's a user experience. It's a consumer product. If you want to make an impact on how people are consuming products, then it has to taste better in water. So it has to have the best in class taste. We know these are the most important points for our consumers. So when we develop our product, we keep these things in our minds. So from a product perspective, lots of really truly understanding how the consumer behaves, why they choose to select a single-use plastic bottle, even when there are so many sustainable options available today. And from that, we try to solve those friction points that the consumers have today in adopting a more sustainable practice. Really, it starts from the consumer and it starts from product. So with the Larq bottle, with the Larq pitcher, these are all designed to provide a different dimension to lower the friction point to adoption for sustainable products today. And as we move down the supply chain, I think also what is important beyond that is, not only what products you're delivering, what kind of usage patterns you're delivering for the consumer, but also your supply chain, your operations. We are a carbon neutral company when we ship products. Our shipping logistics, but also our reverse logistics are carbon neutral, and we work very hard to make that happen. So not only the product itself, but also our impact through our operations and through how we do business. And from a mission perspective, not only do we support our sustainable, healthy mission and wellness mission through our products, but we also support it through our charity partners like 1% for the Planet, like WellAware, and just to name a couple.
I definitely want to dive into each bucket a little bit further, but with all of those components to what it takes to become a sustainable company all around, how have you really set goals and measured success when it comes to sustainability? I know I shared those awesome results for how much plastic waste that you guys have reduced, but how do you set those goals and how do you measure success over time?
I think that's a great question because today there's so much greenwashing just from your marketing, especially larger companies tend to focus on sustainability without much measurable impact. So we really fundamentally, really truly care about our business, the success of our business is so tied to the success of our sustainable efforts. What we want to make sure that we are doing is measuring not only converting as many people to this new product as possible, but also measuring our success of retaining those customers, our success of keeping the customer on a more sustainable and healthier hydration journey. And what we mean by that is, once someone buys the product, or they keep using it, has it abated their plastic usage? Has it really made an impact on and changed their behavior? And we do a lot of post-purchase surveys. We try to really truly understand our consumer. With our new product, the Lark Pitcher, we're launching a app with this product that can help us better understand the user needs and user behavior, provide them with advice and suggestions on how to use that product, how to maintain a more sustainable hydration practice. These are all, in some ways, built into what we do as a brand because, like I mentioned, not only is this our mission, it is tied to our success, right? The more you're using our product, hopefully the more likely you're to buy a future product, recommend it to a friend, and as a result of that, also less likely to use a single-use plastic water bottle.
The reason why I always get so excited whenever we get to chat is because Lark is really on the forefront of innovation around the sustainability space, from your product to how you've gone about, embracing sustainability overall. I definitely want to dive more a little bit on the product side, especially for maybe a few of our listeners who are with brands who don't necessarily have a sustainable product right now, but they want to have, they want to make the change to become more sustainable. How would you challenge brands to think about product innovation when it comes to, implementing and integrating sustainability into that piece? What are a few things you think that they should be doing when it comes to, that product innovation?
Obviously, not every product and every company has this built-in DNA, but I think every company can make strides to be more sustainable and, as a result, appeal to the consumer along these lines. Most of the companies here on BigCommerce platform is probably direct-to-consumer focused. So I think your shipping, carbon footprint, and how you bring your products, your freight. A lot of people don't think about these things, but freight is a huge contributor, whether you're ocean shipping or shipping by air. So planning your operations and your demand in an efficient way so that you could make ocean shipping that actually really reduces carbon footprint as a company as well. And being transparent with your customers, right? If you are making these efforts, being transparent with them, then you will be rewarded for that. So that's one. And I think the other is a lot of packaging. So even if you don't have a naturally sustainable focused product, most companies have packaging around their product. Increasingly, I think consumers are thinking about that when they're doing their unboxing, and that's part of the experience. So I think it's a positive for not only the companies, but also for the consumer to choose to invest in more sustainable packaging, biocompostable packaging, recycled packaging, rather than single-use plastic, which is widely used today still. Increasingly, there's a lot of choices on the market today. It does require some investment, but I think it does pay off. So I think there's a lot of places that you could offer these kind of things, and from a practice perspective, right, built and design your product where you could, especially if you have a hardware product or hard goods, then design it to last, design it to be replaceable or fixable. I think there's a huge trend, and in some ways a negative trend, towards design obsolescence. Probably always feels like every time there's an update on your iPhone, it's a design to fail after a certain amount of time. So I think really fighting that urge to design in obsolescence as well. And, I think consumers are smart. They are going to If you're going after the sustainable-minded consumer, and I think increasingly that's a bigger part of the population, I think you have to embrace that fully.
I want to expand on that a little bit more because I do think in terms of transparency and, really showcasing what you're doing as part of the supply chain and operations process is really, really important. We talked about, obviously, you guys are using carbon neutral shipping, returns. How has this benefited Larq in terms of connecting with your customers and with your target audience?
A lot of people that choose Larq are obviously sustainability minded. And for us, this is just part of our offering, not only starting from product, but every aspect of our business, really approaching this in a 360 way. What we see from some recent studies and some recent surveys is that, Gen Z and millennial shoppers will reward sustainable brands, and they're willing to spend as much as 10, 15% more on sustainable products. So one, that gives you a pricing premium, allows you to make those investments. If you embrace these kind of trends, and consumers are willing to pay a little bit more, and oftentimes that's more than enough to cover more sustainable shipping, better packaging, a lot of things around our operations. And it allows you to communicate those things to the consumer as well. So choosing sustainable materials, organic, recycled, natural around packaging and supporting local suppliers where you don't have to transport everything from afar, it really reduces carbon emissions as well. In 2020, Larq also joined the Plastic Pollution Coalition, an initiative that challenges businesses to improve on their footprint every single year. The Larq packaging is already 90+% recyclable. Our newest product, the Larq Pitcher, will be 99% recyclable. So we are also, even within our own company, working towards improvement every single year as well.
That's a perfect segue to what I wanted to dive into next. We've talked about product innovation. We've talked about the supply chain and the operations process as it relates to sustainability. I want to widen the scope and think a little bit more high level. How can brands really practice what they preach and live and breathe sustainability at the company mission level? We've talked about your partnership with 1% for the Planet as a way that you've brought sustainability to the forefront. What are some other ways that Larq has really gone out of your way, if you will, to really connect with customers and preach and live and breathe sustainability?
We think about sustainability and wellness in a 360 way, starting with the customer, starting with our product, which I think is obviously the most important thing, but that extends to packaging operations, that extends to our charitable foundations that we work with, like Wellaware and 1% for the Planet. We support nonprofits beyond just on the product side. We dedicate some of our budget towards organizations like 501(c), which is a nonprofit for the younger generation focused on food, water, and shelter. Wellaware in East Africa, where we're helping to get access to clean water for at-risk communities that have lack of access to clean water as well. And also in our community building, we have a content platform called Bask, as well as our social media communities. We tend to do things outside the product, right? We're not just marketing to people on a daily basis. We also talk about how do you improve sustainability within our everyday life that has nothing to do maybe with hydration. And we do talk about advice that we share with our audience and also source from our audience. How do you compost? How do you travel sustainably? How do you practice exactly what you said, practice what you preach beyond just the things that we care about around our own products? This past July, we are doing something called the Plastic Free July. And we've done it 2 years in a row now where we encourage the whole company, right? So the whole team to try to not consume any single-use plastic for a whole month. And it's really, really tough because I actually collected my own single-use plastic impact for a couple weeks leading up to that practice, leading up to the Plastic Free July launch. And, I had just trash bags full of plastic, and going through all of July not using any plastic was really brings a sense of awareness that some of the things that you don't even think about are not sustainable in your everyday practice. It's probably not sustainable for the full year. I would be probably living in the woods, but wife and I began cutting out single-use plastic during these months, but it does have this compounding impact on the rest of your year because you do think about it more. It's kind of this kind of centering and brings awareness to how you, and mindfulness to how you are consuming not only at the supermarket, but just everyday products, and how integral it is entwined with our lives that single-use plastic is today. But there are a lot of ways to mitigate that. And you learn things like you don't have to use plastic wrap, you don't have to use plastic bags. There are a lot of other ways to live without it as well.
That's an awesome challenge. I definitely need to try that in my own life. Definitely for me in the past 18 months going through the pandemic, getting takeout food and doing a couple of more curbside pickup, I definitely have noticed increased plastic use just for on-the-go items. And so I'm going to take that challenge upon myself. Maybe I'll try to do it before next July, but I'll start collecting and see my impact as well. On that note as well, like you just mentioned, I love that as a founder in the office with the company, you guys are actively having the whole team think about the impact as well, really tying back to your mission. I know we briefly touched on greenwashing a little bit earlier, and I think it's something that unfortunately we do still see a lot of in today's commerce landscape, especially as sustainability has become more of a trend, right? We have a lot of companies who are wanting to make sure that they're relevant. And for those who are unfamiliar with the term greenwashing that are listening, it really is essentially a form of marketing, kind of a marketing spin, which sustainable and public relations and marketing are kind of used to persuade customers that a brand's products, are super environmentally friendly, when maybe it's not quite the case yet. For most people too, it comes pretty naturally. They think, hey, being more eco-friendly is really important right now. And I think it's the direction that we should be headed. But they're not really completely adopting, right, all of the initiatives and all of the results right away to become an incredibly green and sustainable company. As you mentioned, you guys have Basque, which I love reading the blog. I think there's a lot of great tips there for our listeners who are looking to lead a more sustainable life and learn more about Larq. That's a great content. All in all, this greenwashing movement, it really highlights a huge aspect of sustainable commerce that is transparency, right? How easily and readily and clearly are you making, your sustainable information available to your team, your customers, your partners? So how would you encourage companies to really avoid greenwashing, and what steps can they take to gradually become a more sustainable company? Because I think we all know it's not going to happen overnight.
With sustainability, whether we're talking about companies or individuals or society, it's a long-term problem, right? And we have to take a long-term view to solve for this problem. Not only in our everyday lives, we have to make long-term changes as a society, at the individual level, at the company level. And I think the reward is also longer term. So I know there's a natural friction with company needing to put up quarterly numbers or even monthly numbers, especially larger companies who are public. But I think it's short-term thinking. Greenwashing is obviously not great because you might be thinking as a consumer you are buying into something that is going to be sustainable, that is going to be recyclable, or something that is good for the planet when it isn't. But I think consumers are increasingly intelligent and increasingly well-educated and smart globally. And increasingly, sustainability is becoming more and more important. So I think that as a company, there might be some short-term benefits of greenwashing, but I think longer term, consumers are going to kind of wise up as we get better at this, and as sustainability and environment becomes more and more important topic that's top of mind year round. Companies that embrace that truly, right, rather than just greenwashing something for the longer term, will receive the benefits. Like I mentioned, some studies around pricing capabilities already. You're able to charge a premium for your customers to cover that. You probably have higher customer retention. But consumers will also figure out if you're greenwashing, and that's going to have a negative impact longer term. At the end of the day, this is a cost problem, right? This is a longer term problem, but it's also a cost problem, not only for companies, but for our society, right? We have technologies, we have the capability of using different materials, but oftentimes it comes down to cost. My advice to companies is that they should invest in longer term solutions, because this is a longer term problem, and invest in themselves longer term, because if you do care about things like customer retention, if you do care about things that impact longer term customer loyalty and your pricing power and your brand, I think it's a worthwhile investment longer term.
That is something that a lot of folks are concerned about when it comes to becoming more sustainable, is the cost. It's just like you said, there's really no denying that it's often more costly sometimes, right, to choose to make choices that are more sustainable. For a lot of smaller businesses and newer businesses who are just getting off the ground, it can definitely make it more difficult, right, to commit to being more sustainable just from a cost perspective. Mm-hmm. You just mentioned it as well, but how does an investment in sustainability really impact your costs? But more specifically, I would love to learn more about how Larq managed this in the earlier days of the business, and maybe what advice you have for smaller businesses who are looking to set long-term goals early on.
We kind of mentioned cost already, and this is obviously more costly today, but increasingly you have more and more options to have more sustainable packaging, have more sustainable materials. And I think as we opt into that as a society, as the consumers opt into that, costs will come down. This is just like anything else. Costs will come down over time as there's more demand for it. And I think there's a clear trend that there's more and more demand for this. So companies that want to get ahead of it, should start investing now into that. But I also understand both at the company level, but also at the consumer level, it could be a hard decision, right? If you are trying to make ends meet, sometimes it's easy to reach for something that's super cheap plastic and one use. You don't always have the luxury of, being able to. But for those, I encourage for those companies and for those consumers that can, the more you choose those sustainable options today, it will help the market. I really believe that it will help the market increase that demand, and over time costs will come down, not only for businesses, but also for the end consumer as well that can't maybe afford sustainable products today. So I think where you can invest in those things, I think it has longer term benefits on your margins, longer term benefits on your revenue, longer term benefits on your customer retention. But some things are going to increase costs in the short term, yes. By going to recycled products or organic fabrics and things like this, it is going to have an potentially short-term increased cost. But you can also do it more creatively, right? By removing unnecessary packaging, by removing unnecessary things that maybe the customer aren't going to value or aren't going to need in the first place. That by investing in less, it is also possible to improve your sustainability as well. I already mentioned the pricing power over time. We really truly believe that if you lean into that, the customer will reward you, and the customer will see that it does cost more to do that. And over time, costs will come down as you have more volumes as well.
I totally agree. And actually, there's a brand that I love to shop with. It's a beauty skincare brand, and what they do is for every 5 bottles that you collect from their products, if you actually return it with recycling, you get like a free 1 full-size thing of product, which I think is awesome. It definitely encourages me as a consumer, right, to kind of tap into their sustainability mission. And I think exactly what you said, the demand is definitely growing, and it's something that we've continued to see. And I think sustainability now has really become a key topic that can help brands connect with their customers and their target audience. And at this point really is crucial for overall marketing and differentiation in the competitive space. Obviously, there's millions of e-commerce stores, and the vast majority aren't necessarily, ranking on Google search. They don't have thousands of social media followers to reach, but, making that authentic investment in sustainability and then telling that story is definitely one way to make your brand more meaningful. It gives you something, like you said, on your channels with Lark to promote via your public relations, your social media, the way that you create content, like I mentioned with Basque by Lark, and forging influencer partnerships as well. So how do you leverage the sustainability aspect of your business to really continue educating your customers and finding those connections? Because I know you guys have done a few cool things with Lark.
I think at the end of the day, it's about having a conversation with your audience, and it goes back and forth, right? We listen to our audience, we listen to our customers, we listen to our potential customers. We also try to provide content that's related. It doesn't always have to be about hydration. Like I said, we use Basque as a platform. We use initiatives with our charity partners. We use Plastic Free July. These are all platforms to talk about sustainability, which is something that we really care about. We talk about health. It comes back to hydration oftentimes, but it also is a great opportunity to see how to create content and forge these deeper bonds with your customers. And guess what? If they love learning from you about how to have more sustainable travel experience, how to have a more sustainable day-to-day, maybe in your everyday carry or your lunch, whatever it is, if they are learning something from you, and they'll remember you for when they need that water bottle, or they'll remember you when they need that pair of jeans, whatever you're selling. If you're relevant in a consumer's life outside of your main product focus, and also unique and authentic about how you approach it, I do think over time that consumer might not be that right in that moment, but again, it comes down to a longer term investment in that relationship building with the consumer. We also leverage not only our own content platform, but also leverage our partners. We have partnered with celebrities like Draymond Green, 3X NBA champion, the Golden State Warriors, who is a native of Michigan. And we have a mutual interest in clean water because he grew up in a town not very far from Flint, Michigan. So he was a natural partner, a natural ambassador for us when we talked about access to clean water and providing more access to clean water around the world in a more sustainable and healthier way. Lastly, to build these meaningful relationships with our nonprofit partners and to ensure that we're supporting them not only monetarily, but also from a perspective of, using our marketing platform. We reach hundreds of thousands of people to market what they're building as well.
Before we start heading toward the end of the episode, I have to ask you, as the pioneer of an amazing brand, amazing sustainable brand, where do you think the future of sustainable commerce is headed?
Sustainability is not a choice. Increasingly, it is not a nice to have anymore. It's a must do and a must have in our society, how we live at an individual level, at a society level. And I think that will translate that it will be true sustainability and true focus on sustainability around businesses is also going to be essential. It's not going to be a trend. It's not going to be an optional thing. And I think if businesses want to thrive in the next coming decade or two, that they really have to put the environment, their impact, they have to account for these things. They have to be transparent. And all these things are going to be the default. They're going to be table stakes pretty soon. And that's good, right? That's where we want to be. But I think really that's where it's headed. And brands that will ultimately benefit are going to be the first adopters, are the people who are going to be truly lean into this process, because I believe consumers will look back and reward people that do that.
Before we go, I have to also ask, I know the Lark Pitcher is available for pre-order right now. I think that's going to be available readily more soon. What are any new sustainable products that we may see from Lark or anything headed in Lark's future?
Like you mentioned, we're shipping the Lark Pitcher, which is our first foray into a more sustainable hydration at home, whereas the Lark bottle was a product that was more designed for on the go. We are shipping currently all of our pre-orders, and that is available on liftlark.com. You'll probably see some other products from us in the near future before the holiday season as well as next year. But, I think we're always keeping that convenience factor, the water safety factor, and the flavor and taste and experience factor at front and center. So we're going to continue to launch new products that make it easier for consumers to make that more sustainable and healthier choice anywhere and anytime.
Awesome. And for our listeners today, if there's one or two key things that you think they should leave with in terms of how they can think more green and be more sustainable in their businesses, what would those be?
Make impactful changes, every quarter, every month. Really try to think about how it could translate to your business. It doesn't have to be this transformative change overnight where it requires hundreds of thousands of investment. Small changes can add up to a lot, and small changes, changing one part of your packaging, changing one aspect of how you plan shipping to decrease your carbon footprint, changing how you communicate with your customers and how you do reverse logistics and how you recommend how they maybe repair or replace the product, can all add up to a lot over time. So just make meaningful small steps every day, just like consumers do today in our everyday lives.
Awesome. And for also listeners who may want to learn more about Lark or connect with you after this, where can they find you?
Find us at LiveLark on our social handles on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. That's LiveLarq. And also at www.livelark.com.
Awesome. Well, it was so wonderful talking to you today, Justin. For those of you listening in, Justin is also one of our amazing speakers on our Make It Big conference. So if you haven't already, you can register for free at www.bigcommerce.com/make-it-big. But as well, always, thank you for joining us, Justin. And also be sure to check out more episodes of the Make It Big podcast coming soon.
Thanks for listening to the Make It Big podcast. Want even more insights and expert advice? Experience our Make It Big conference, now available on demand. You'll get e-commerce tips and strategies from global thought leaders like Mark Cuban, Ann Handley, and Neil Patel, plus BigCommerce partners like Google, TikTok, and more. Watch today at bigcommerce.com/makeitbig.